Sorry for the delay. Appreciate your patience. There's a few things we need to get through this morning. I'm joined with the Emergency Services Minister, Jihad Dib, the Commissioner for the SES, Wassing, as well as Acting Commissioner for Police and Reconstruction Authority, Director Mal Lanyon. There's a few things we need to get through this morning. Firstly, I want to thank everyone in the community on the Mid North Coast for what has been a very difficult 48 hours. There are obviously reports of an individual, man who's lost his life in the floodwaters. We're very sorry about that. That must be devastating for his family and for his community, and that community will take time to rebuild and recover as a result of that death. I must also say that we're bracing for more bad news in the next 24 hours. This natural disaster has been terrible for this community. It's affected a wide number of people. It's affected tens of thousands of houses, and as a result, we are bracing for more bad news. I can report that we're expecting 100 millimetres of rain in the general area of operations over the next 24 hours, but in isolated areas it could get between 200 and 300 mils, which is, again, is not what we need given the huge amount of rainfall that's fallen in the last 48 hours. Both the rivers around Taree and Kempsey are stable or slightly receding. However, there is more rainfall in the mountains, and we can't guarantee that it will not peak again, although the Manning River's peaked at an unprecedented level not seen since the 1920s. Emergency services have deployed 2,500 emergency workers, including 2,200 SES volunteers and professionals. There are 500 appliances, including trucks and boats, and 10 helicopters that are on site. It's one of the largest deployments for a storm cell that we've seen in New South Wales, but I have to say it's a natural disaster. Disaster is in the title, and the frontline defence for the New South Wales Government and emergency services is to evacuate if you get an evacuation order, to listen to emergency broadcasts, to download the Hazards Near Me app. It's a hugely important tool that you will need to keep you and your family safe, and we're asking everybody to do that. Don't drive through floodwaters. Unfortunately, we've seen scores of rescues in the last 3 days as a result of people continuing to drive through floodwaters that they believed were safe. It's never safe. You're putting yourself in danger, you're putting your family member in danger, and you're putting the rescue worker who's been sent in to try and rescue you as a result of taking the reckless action. We need people to use common sense, to listen to emergency broadcasts and not put themselves in harm's way. There is 140 flood warnings. 50,000 people are in the range where they've been asked to prepare to evacuate and could be isolated, and there's been 9,500 properties in the direct vicinity. So we're far from out of the woods here, and whilst we're currently focused on the rescue effort, we will then move into the repair and reconstruction period so that we can get these towns back on their feet. I want to thank everybody for their understanding, for listening to emergency service workers, and of course, and I say this every time there's a natural disaster, and the grim reality is that we're getting more and more used to this because there's more and more of these natural disasters. I want to thank all of the volunteers, people that left their family, their community, their small business, their job, to go and put themselves in harm's way and save a complete stranger. We would be in big trouble without you, and we thank you for your dedication to the state. I'm going to pass over to the SES Commissioner.
Thank you, Premier. Can I start by also thanking the tremendous effort of the local communities that are feeling the direct impact of this, and the fact that I've seen firsthand that they're wrapping around each other and working with our emergency services. Please continue to do that. Also, a huge shout out to all of the emergency services, SES volunteers, all of the support agencies. It is again a really huge effort, as you've just heard from the Premier, in terms of the numbers. We are talking 140 flood warnings. 34 of those flood warnings are emergency warnings. When we say emergency warnings, they are around evacuations through to either, in some cases, we still have very active areas that are in fact emergency warnings that are moving to high ground or isolating areas. I'll continue to stress the importance of heeding the warnings, and that this is about us trying to help the communities prepare well in advance to any potential floodwaters. We still have a very active situation in the context of the rainfall of 100 millimetres through to embedded storms. The embedded storms will continue to see flash flooding. The flash flooding is a high risk on anyone that is travelling on the roads, and again, you need to be situationally aware and not just rely on the warnings. We will continue to put the warnings out, but you cannot just rely on the warnings. If you live in areas that you feel that you're unsafe or have concerns, that is a very good time to actually relocate in many cases. Our area focus today very much is in the areas of Taree right through to Kempsey. So there's a range of communities from Kempsey, Port Macquarie, Coffs Harbour, Bellingen and Urunga. They are just to name some of those areas. That's the areas that we've currently got active flooding. We continue to have flood rescue calls come in. We have worked through nearly all of the flood rescues from the previous 24 hours, but again, already this morning we've had another 33 flood rescue requests this morning. That shows that this continues to be a very active environment for us. I do acknowledge for the community that we are dealing with, in many communities, record floods. So in the living memory of those local communities, they have not seen this level of flooding. But again, it is why we have tried to communicate and aim to communicate very early. Some of the first warnings and messaging around this weather event was over a week ago. Then the focus in terms of the weather event in terms of Mid North Coast. Then our system has very much been aligned to providing advice messaging, which means stay informed. This is all on the Hazards Near Me app. That's why we keep pointing back to the Hazards Near Me app. Then prior to the flooding that we saw and some of the significant impacts that we're still feeling now, that's the emergency warnings. The emergency warnings that are the last line of defence in terms of asking people to relocate where it's safe to do so. We are well resourced. We have significant helicopters, significant boats, lots of frontline personnel from SES right through to all of the support agencies and the emergency services from every colour, every emergency service that continues to be there and will continue to be there. These are very high risk operations. I will not compromise the safety of my people or any other emergency services people, but these are, whilst highly trained people, they are working very closely with the community. What the community can do is to help us is to heed those warnings, relocate early, evacuate if it's safe to do so when you receive these emergency evacuation warnings. If you cannot, please call us, and that's why we'll have the capabilities and the support and the focus that we need to and will continue to have. I'll leave it there for the moment, but suffice to say, next 24 to 48 hours is still a key focus in terms of the pointy end of our response operations, acknowledging that we've still got weather that will continue into the weekend and potentially further weather, including rainfall and significant winds into next week as well. So we're playing for the long haul here. In addition to our own resources, we do have some interstate resources coming in to support us, and we'll continue to do so and assess that situation as the weather emerges. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for being here. And at the outset, of course, our hearts go out to the family of the deceased gentleman. As you've just heard, we've got an incredibly volatile situation. I said a few days ago that this will break some records, and these aren't the records that you want to break, but we've seen more rain and more flooding in the Mid and the North Coast area than we've ever seen before. We've seen an impact that's affecting the tens of thousands of people. But we've also seen the way that our emergency services have responded. As you know, 2,500 personnel are out in the field at the moment, and of those 2,200 SES. But one of the best things as well is the way that the interoperability is occurring. We've got the police, the ambulance, RFS, Fire and Rescue, Volunteer Rescue Association, Surf Lifesavers and Marine Rescue, with that one purpose of trying to do everything they can for the community. We are throwing every single thing that we've got at this incident. We're there to do everything that we can to support the community, and it's been very, very clear. With the number of appliances out there, over 500 appliances, helicopters and 60 flood rescue teams, we're not leaving anything to chance. But as the Premier and the Commissioner have said, this is unprecedented, it's a fluid situation, and it's something that we know that we need to work with the community with. And again, I reinforce that point. Please make sure that you heed all of those warnings, all of the instructions. The Hazards NIME app is a point of truth. The SES website is a point of truth. The SES local media is a point of truth. And the reason we keep saying that is because we need to make sure that the messages are nice and clear. I can assure you that we are doing everything that we can as a government across all of our emergency services to make sure that everybody is safe and that everybody is secure, but we also need people in the community to assist us by playing their part. And just some last statistic that I want to give you, there are 14 evacuation centres that are open at the moment. As you know, that there are over 140 warnings at the moment. But to give you just a concept of the last 24 hours, in the last 24 hours, there were over 1,000 incidents that have been responded to, and within that, 330 flood rescues. So in a 24-hour period, 330 flood rescues, 1,000 incidents. I said that we'll throw everything that we've got at it. We're doing the very best that we can. I appreciate everybody who is doing all that they can to support the community, our emergency services, all of our partner agencies. We will get through it. This is a difficult time, but we will get through it. I might hand over to Mr. Thurtell.
Good morning. Well, this is yet another extraordinary weather event that's having an extraordinary impact on the communities of New South Wales. Up around the Taree area, we've seen communities that have never flooded in recorded history now flooding. Obviously, there's homeowners that have never had their homes inundated with flood water, which are now underwater. There is a significant state-level response to support our local emergency and our regional emergency management committees, as well as our community partners and organisations that are already helping their fellow community members not only deal with the emergency but recover from the emergency. Sadly, as the Premier has already indicated, one life has already been confirmed, lost, and we have reports of 3 other people missing. I know the message has already gone out, and the Premier and the Commissioner of the SES have just mentioned it, but really the danger of walking through or driving through floodwaters cannot be overstated, and people need to avoid doing that. But the other extraordinary thing that has already been mentioned, but you can never mention it too often, is the good work that our emergency service organisations and volunteers are doing to ensure that people are rescued, people are putting their own lives at risk to save other lives. They're doing an extraordinary job. You've only got to have a look at the footage that's already appeared on the media. But I can assure everybody that at a state level, we're doing all we can to support the local level already. As Mr Lanyon will tell you in a minute, we are planning for recovery and assisting our farmers and local businesses in recover from this emergency. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The thoughts of the Reconstruction Authority are very much with the communities that are currently affected by floods. Tragically, a number of these communities have suffered repeated disasters. So as Peter mentioned, whilst we are currently and will be in the response phase for a period of time, the Reconstruction Authority is very much working with agencies to make sure that we are prepared for recovery. We are making sure that the systems are in place to make sure that communities can get back on their feet quickly, and the New South Wales Reconstruction Authority will stand alongside communities. To that effect, we are already planning for recovery assistance points. Whilst the locations of those recovery assistance points will be determined by the needs of the community, they will bring together a range of services so community members can seek assistance and support through those centres. We'll announce the locations and the services provided as quickly as possible, either on the Reconstruction Authority website or on the New South Wales Government website. In addition to recovery assistance points, we will conduct mobile outreach because we know that there are communities that are isolated. We know that some communities will not be able to get to those centres. The key for us is to make sure we service as many people as possible. One of the key focuses in recovery is to make sure that clean-up happens, and from what we've seen, certainly on the television, there is significant inundation. We're already working with councils and with communities to ensure that we have the system in place to make sure that we can clean up quickly. The EPA and Public Works are already looking at temporary transfer stations so that we can clean up and get rubbish, get garbage, get possessions out of the street so the community can see progress. The EPA last night waived levies for waste collection, so that will assist councils, but we'll continue to work with councils to make sure that that happens. We will continue to provide a range of support in place. One of the really key things during the response phase is to make sure that we understand the impacts, understand the needs, so that we can support communities. Yesterday, the Minister for Recovery issued 16 natural disaster declarations for the LGAs currently affected by floods. That obviously can change depending on the impact. As Commissioner Wassing said earlier, we are very much monitoring the weather, and we will respond and make sure that we can recover communities who are affected. Thank you very much. There'll be more information provided in time, but obviously we're very firmly focused on making sure the community is safe at this time.
Just before we get to questions, I just note that I spoke to the Prime Minister not long ago, who pledged his support from the Commonwealth Government with any help that we need at the state level, and I know the Minister McBain's been in touch with Jihad in the last half an hour about federal government assistance. The ADF's already involved. Also spoke to Tanya Thompson, the member for Mile Lakes, who's embedded in her community, as are many other civic leaders, working very hard to make sure that their community's represented and giving us up to date the latest information. We're thinking about her and all the mayors and MPs and people who are really called to work incredibly hard during these difficult periods as well. Happy to take questions.
Just on Tanya, just because you mentioned her there, she has called for a mobile healthcare clinic to be set up for the Great Lakes region. Is the government going to do that? Is there any movement on that?
It's very difficult to get supplies into some of these isolated communities, but I know that the Minister for Health spoke to her yesterday afternoon, and I know that the Minister for Emergency Services had a round call, a phone call with affected MPs. So we'll make sure everything that is possible to be located, particularly around evacuation centres for first aid, is on site. But this storm front hit in the last 48 hours, and I'm very conscious that we don't want to overpromise things that can't be delivered, particularly if those communities are knocked out. Their roads are knocked out and they're isolated. The immediate priority is obviously rescue, and I'm confident with the amount of heavy trucks and helicopters that we've got on site that we can manage it where it's up to at the moment. But obviously it's a fluid situation, and we'll keep in contact with her.
What do we know about the 63-year-old man who lost his life and also those still missing?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to go into details about that individual. I understand that police are obviously in contact with his family. But as Acting Commissioner Thurtell said, we've got grave fears of another 3 people. So the grim reality is that the community on the Mid North Coast will have to brace for potentially more bad news in the day ahead. It's not what we want to hear, but unfortunately this disaster was major.
Did you hear about the circumstances in which the man's body was found, or any of those details?
Did you want to speak to
that? What I can tell you is that the male, a neighbour, noticed the person on the veranda, and in response to that, police got an emergency call, and the SES, we can confirm that a body has been recovered, and that the police are undertaking an investigation for the coroner in relation to it. The exact circumstances are yet to be determined, but that will be part of the coronial investigation.
And any further details about you mentioned the 3 people who were missing?
3 additional.
Yeah, can you provide any further information about them?
Yes, there was a 60-year-old lady up around the Dorrigo area who's been reported missing. Another 25-year-old male around the Warhope area who's believed to have driven into floodwaters, and that vehicle is reported missing. And we also have a 49-year-old male who is believed may have walked into floodwaters, but that's all yet to be confirmed. These people are reported missing. I don't want to preempt any results of anything, but obviously, as we said, we hold grave fears for all 3 individuals.
That 49-year-old, do you have a location of where he's gone?
I can give you that afterwards, if that's okay.
Residents on North Moto Road, where that man died, said they called SES for help early yesterday, but no one came. Residents ended up coordinating their own evacuation by boat. Could that death have been prevented?
No. Look, as I said, I can't go into the exact details, but SES had been in contact with that male, and police were obviously had turned up as soon as his body was discovered. So I understand, and I can't preempt all these things, but I understand that there may have been existing medical conditions, and so, as I said, the coronial investigation will determine whether the floodwaters played a part in that deceased.
Commissioner Wassing, you said this morning there's been an additional 33 rescues. Are you able to provide any further detail about what type of rescues they were and where they may have been? Are you finding them concentrated in a certain area?
The flood rescues that we've seen overnight have typically been associated with some of the travel and people still driving into floodwaters. We still have known locations, that area right through from Taree right up to Kempsey, that we do have homes that are slowly, in terms of some of these systems, the river systems are still rising, and so as a result of that, people start becoming isolated. In some cases, the flood rescues they get isolated. They've initially decided to stay. They've changed their mind, turns into a flood rescue. So it's a bit of a mixed bag in that respect. We prioritise those that are the high risk aspects. Unfortunately, in this case, that there's potentially other outcomes associated with that. But again, it's really why we constantly hammer this messaging around if you can stay off the roads, that listen to the warnings. Just don't drive through floodwaters, frankly. And in some cases, there's other lower level rescues, so there's a larger contingent of what we would call lower priority rescues, and some of those are large animal rescues, horses, livestock and the like as well. So we always will prioritise people before the livestock, but that's also factored into some of our activities.
Premier, a lot of people have already lost a lot. Will there be any financial support for those people?
Look, almost certainly there will be, but we generally stage our response to these natural disasters. The immediate focus is obviously on rescuing people and ensuring that where they're still in harm's way, we can get them to safety, opening evacuation centres. The process that we would follow in these circumstances is wait for the immediate danger to pass, and then the focus can turn on to reconstruction. One of the reasons we've got Mal here, and no doubt his team will be on the ground as soon as the floodwaters recede and they can get into Port Macquarie, Taree, Kempsey, is so that we can make that process quick and as fast as possible. We want these communities to get back on their feet as soon as possible. As I said, the grim reality is that we've got a lot of experience in these natural disasters because this is not the first one.
You mentioned before, that there will be 100 millimetres across the general area, 200 to 300 in isolated areas. What are some of those key areas?
It's difficult to know exactly where it will hit. I mean, I remember during the tropical cyclone that came down a few months ago, the heaviest rainfalls, unfortunately enough, were in Dorrigo. Again, Dorrigo's been hit hard with this storm front, so we can expect isolated rainfalls of that kind of amount, and you may be unlucky enough to be in a community where it hits particularly hard. The problem for us is twofold. Firstly, there's been 2 days of incredible rain. Taree's seen 1 month of rain in 24 hours. The second problem we have with the weather is that we're expecting dangerous winds to hit, if not on the weekend, then early next week, which is the last thing the Mid North Coast needs. Obviously, no one wants that, but it's an indication of the fact that we're not out of the woods.
Commissioner, sorry to change up again. I know people from the country are so proud of their patch. Is there a little bit of reluctance from some locals in these areas to evacuate and to leave their properties?
I think potentially in some cases our communities may be reluctant. They have pride in their homes. In my experience over a very long period of time, in this case I would suggest people may not have expected the levels of floods, irrespective of the communications. And so we're talking Taree as an example, record floods. The previous record was 1929, so there's nobody in that community nobody in that community would know the level of the record floods, and this was over those record floods by nearly half a metre. So the point of reference is often framed in individual views. What our key messaging continues to be is that we implore you to listen to our messaging. We've got not just the Bureau providing intelligence information, we've got highly subject matter experts in terms of doing all the analysis in terms of what that means in terms of the river systems. And when we say evacuate, we're asking you to evacuate where it's safe to do so. But the key message really is we're asking individuals to shared responsibility. You have a decision-making process in this and a responsibility in this. If you don't feel safe at any stage, and it's safe to leave, that's the time to leave. Go to your family, go to your friends. We'll always have a capability and support the situations where there are emergencies. But yes, country people are very proud. That's a great thing. That's why for most of our emergency services, the people that are out there now all live in these local communities. And I think we sometimes forget that in terms of that these are locals helping locals. Some of them have uniforms on, some of them don't.
The big 50,000 people still stranded or at risk of being isolated, what should they expect now?
Yes, we would ask them to continue to be very focused in terms of their local situation, the local weather. If you're isolated, some parts of those communities will be isolated only for a very short period of time, where the waters might raise and fall very, very quickly. We're already seeing that in a number of the catchments. But to continue to remain focused, don't panic. If you're not sure and you've got access to the website, seek the information on the website. If you're not sure and you're concerned, you've got 132 500. That might be a call for assistance, or if it's an emergency call, it's obviously 000. But keep vigilant, be patient, and keep connected with us and keep supporting each other as well as the emergency services.
Commissioner Wessing, obviously the focus here is in the Mid North Coast,
yes.
But it's raining in large parts of the state at the moment. Are there other parts where the SES has concerns at the moment about potential flooding?
We have pre-deployed some capabilities in some management teams up into the northeast as well. The system potentially, and it is already reaching into the lower parts of northeast already, as we see. And we've also got some preparation even around Sydney. So here we are in Sydney, and there's some active rainfall events there. Different sort of circumstances, but again, we're pre-positioning and focused in terms of the situation there. And then we do have some focus into next week, associated with the winds into the south and southeast parts of New South Wales as well.
So just when you say northeast, are we talking north of this current zone, north of Kempsey?
Yes, north of Kempsey, yeah, it continues to be. Our focus is fundamentally at the bottom end of that in terms of the current weather patterns, but there is potential for this weather to still move north or another system to come through. It's quite a dynamic weather system. I'm not a bureau person,
No,
obviously, but
yeah.
Can I just add one point to that, and it might picks up on this and some of the other things. What's been really important here is the learnings that we've had over the years, and primarily as soon as we knew this weather event was coming up, there was a pre-deployment of assets and planning had started to take place. This was well over a week before the rain band hit. The other element that we need to also highlight is the communication. It's one thing that came out really clearly. And just in terms of the hazards near me app and the warning system, we generally don't go straight to an evacuate. There's been a series of warnings that come along the way, which is why we press the point so much to the community to keep up to date with the hazards near me app and to keep up to date with the SES website. Generally what you would find is a watch and act, then a prepare to evacuate, then an evacuate, then move to higher ground. We just make sure that we layer it through in terms of the SES, keeping the community well informed. So a whole joined up government approach, a clear strategy of communication, pre-deployment. The Commission has just been speaking now about pre-deployment for areas that we think may be impacted. And as the Premier has said, you know, into next week, there also are potential other incidents. Keeping in mind this comes on still the recovery from Tropical Cyclone Alfred, and prior to that, the storms that were back in March. So that communication point and the hazards in the map staggering in terms of priority, and I would urge people again, that is the most important thing that you can keep looking at.
Commissioner, our reporters have been told along that road where that man was found deceased that there were about 17 elderly people that were evacuated by local residents. Why did that happen? Should they have been prioritised?
There's a range of different circumstances. I would say up front, it's not a bad thing that locals helping locals. I think that is a good aspect. If there's urgent calls, we'll respond to those urgent calls. In other cases, we've been door knocking some of these areas. So I wouldn't say that that's a bad thing. We do obviously, we're always conscious of the safety of people doing that. We have even arrangements in terms of spontaneous volunteers where people that have certain skill sets that want to help that might not be part of our services now, and we can incorporate them into our coordination effort, but in a safe manner. So I would say that that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Premier, what's your message to people that are in these stressful situations?
Look, I understand that, particularly if you haven't been hit by a flooding, a natural disaster like this before, and there are many communities in the Mid North Coast that haven't seen flooding like this since the 1920s, that it would be an anxious period, that you'd be concerned about yourself and your family. There's a couple of things that you can do. Download the Hazards Near Me app. Listen to emergency broadcasts, listen to the media. There are evacuation centres, understand where that is in relation to your home, and act early if you can. And I know this isn't available to everybody, but for some people they'll be able to stay with family and friends in safer areas. If the proportion of people who can leave, if they're in a prepare to evacuate area, then that helps the SES. I mean, I think the Commission has been very articulate and direct in explaining that, notwithstanding the assets that were pre-deployed prior to the storm hitting, we don't have 9,500 helicopters that can be deployed immediately at the same time. And we're relying on people to leave if they're given an evacuation order. For some people, that's not going to be possible. They may be elderly, they might be infirm, they might have young children. But if we can get the majority of people out of harm's way, it makes everybody's job a lot easier.
I've just got one more. I appreciate the Alex questions. Just on the sort of locals helping locals, we're hearing a lot of neighbours. There are all sorts of things for people in stress. We probably expected this, but it must warm your heart that people out there are helping each other.
Yeah, this is a really tough, resilient community. The people on the Mid North Coast, they breed them tough up there, but we need them to be tough. I mean, this is pretty difficult. They're going to be isolated for a number of days. Some people have had to rescue their neighbours or get out of harm's way. We're deeply grateful for that. As Commissioner Wassing said, a lot of people who are community-minded in their spare time are members of the RFS or the SES. And that kind of community public-mindedness is brilliant to see. It's exactly what we need right now. It's a huge, huge help for everybody. And frankly, we'd be in big trouble without them.
Premier, if I may just ask on another issue. Last night there was another public place shooting in Mount Lewis, which is about a 12 minutes drive from the Condell Park shooting. A young plumber was killed the other day. Have you been briefed on a potential escalation of violence in that part of Sydney, and do you have concerns?
I'm not going to detail operational briefings that I might have had from New South Wales Police. I'll just give a general message here that these are vicious, violent crimes. They're committed by thugs. The laws in New South Wales are incredibly tough for this kind of murder, this obscene violence, and New South Wales Police form and execute investigations and inquiries that catch people, and then they throw the book at them. So if you want to spend the rest of your life in a small jail cell, this is exactly how you go about it.
Just on operational briefings, Simon Draper told the Parliamentary Inquiry today that as part of these briefings there's not usually minutes kept. He was obviously referring about a briefing from police about the dual caravan plot. Is it common practice that minutes are not kept to these briefings and minutes between yourself and police?
Look, in some instances that may be the case, but you have to appreciate this is a great example, a fast-moving, important investigation where decisions are required and information needs to be given either to me or to senior officers. It's not always possible to have a formal cabinet-level meeting, but I think the people of New South Wales would expect us to act on information quickly and wherever possible keep notes.
Jahad, if I could ask you, mate, Minister, Mount Lewis is in your patch, Condell Park is next to your patch. Is your community concerned?
Oh, look, our community always wants safety, and I think that would be the same for anybody across any part of New South Wales. It's a community made up of good, hard-working people who want to raise a family, and everybody wants to raise their family in a good, safe spot. They want the police to be able to undertake the actions that they need to do, because certainly these sorts of behaviours and these actions put other people at danger, and certainly we don't want any of that in our community or in any community across the state.
Premier,
Okay.
might take a couple
We've
of
got to
quick
get up
questions.
there, so we'll take one more.
Can I just ask a quick question about the rail network?
Sure.
With that issue that crippled the network this week, will there have to be further kind of maintenance done on that, and will the rail line have to be shut or partially closed to fix that in the near future?
The latest briefing I got yesterday morning was that area had been isolated, that the one train line they were able to run the network with it being out of action. I can't answer the question as to whether there'll be some delays while they repair that network, but I am confident that those delays would be minor, largely undertaken out of peak hours and hopefully undertaken when the network's not operating. In other words, I'm not expecting massive further delays as a result of that repair job. Crews were out there overnight fixing it as soon as possible, and probably this isn't an excuse. It was terrible. The transport network was shocking, but transport officials have told me that it's probably one of the worst geographic locations for it to go down, because it was in the middle of 6 train lines and 5 of them were knocked out as soon as the train stopped.
Just another question as well.
All right, this is the last one. Okay.
On the Daily Telegraph front page today, are you concerned about what's being allowed to occur in the hot water industry, particularly the low compliance levels uncovered by the building industry?
Look, it's a completely legitimate question, but I just haven't had an opportunity to review the files on that, given the disaster we're dealing with at the moment.
In response to that, Victoria has mandated warranties on hot water pumps and banned door knocking. I know New South Wales is considering this. Will you announce those changes today?
No.
Thanks, everyone.